look like, March through August, we don't know yet, and that's still to be determined. But we're confident that things are moving along well, and yeah, we're really excited about where we're going, and we're confident that that you all will be excited about the plan that we come up with. And I just wanted to, that's all I had. I just wanted to end with one quote that I thought was relevant to this process. It's attributed to Abe Lincoln. Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. And I think that's where we've been, and we've been sharpening our axe. And thank you for your patience. And March, we're gonna get to chopping. So thank you.
Well, thanks, James. And I knew we were coming up on a year or so from when we hope to have a final plan, and that's why we met a couple of weeks ago. And I thought everybody would just like to hear where we are. That's a great quote, because that's what you've been doing. You've been doing really not the fun part, but yeah. Hopefully you're now organized and ready to hit the ground running. So
yeah,
so
absolutely.
Any questions from anyone?
A quick question: the listening tour, how did that go? Was it well attended? Was it just public, or was it an invitation type?
So and you're referring to the TWRA listening sessions. So yeah, that was an internal listening session. We have our annual lands management meeting, and it's really our WMA staff, so area managers, technicians, and our regional biologists. And so we also have a quail and a turkey team that were established simultaneously or at the same time as development of the deer team. And so part of the agenda of that meeting was having 2 listening sessions, and the attendees of that meeting could attend any 2 sessions, so depending on where their interests lie. So yeah, that's how that went. We really wanted
I thought it was a public forum. Okay.
Not that one, no.
Anyone else? Thank you, James.
Yeah, thank you.
Madam Chairman, one other quick item. I'd like to recognize Doug Markham, the communications director. He gave us a great presentation in Gatlinburg a few months ago about the plans for communicating CWD issues to the public, and just want to get a quick update on what was done and how it went.
Commissioners. We have been doing a lot of work on the CWD project. We've created a logo, and we've sent out, I was telling Commissioner a few minutes ago that we've sent out 1,000 DVDs to our instructors across the state, hoping that they'll run the message. Director Carter did a message prior to the video y'all saw last month. We adjusted some of that video, added some of your thoughts to it. And Director Carter did an introduction to that video, and we sent it last week. Hunter Education Group sent it last week to all across the state. And the director did a great job talking to the kids about CWD and what it means to the state. We're going to start a digital and media package with Channel 2 in Nashville. They're going to do a lot of stuff on their website. They get about 2 million folks a year, and that's a good thing. We got to start somewhere, so we decided to start a media campaign in Nashville, in the capital, and time of year when our legislators are meeting, and hoping that will help them see the message. But as a part of this, they're a corporation. Channel 2 is owned by a corporation, and as part of their group, there's a group called Hyphen that's a part of their corporation, and they're going to be doing a digital marketing campaign for us that you will, I hope, start seeing in the next week. I wish it was earlier than the year, but we've been working on this for about 2 months, and you'll start seeing the message if you're a sportsman and you're looking at the Bass Pro or whatever store you go to shopping. You're going to see a message that pops up that says, help us stop CWD. You'll see our logo, either the agency logo or the new logo we designed, and it will come back to our website and ask sportsmen and non-sportsmen. We've got a message up there today to help us stop chronic wasting disease and explain to them what it is. Since we've last talked to you, we've put together 2 videos showing folks how to properly dress a deer, clean their skull, clean the teeth. All that's on the website. We borrowed a video from Arkansas. It was just really well done, so we didn't try to redo it, on how to debone, how to take the meat off the bones of deer, and it's out there. So we got 3 videos on our site that tells a sportsman how to take care of a deer before they come back to Tennessee. So all that's happened since then. We've posted a lot of stuff on our Facebook and website, of course, including the logo, and getting quite a bit of attention. We've tried to push it out there the best we can with our stuff. This Channel 2 and Hyphen, it's going to be a different thing. I'm hoping that it will saturate the market with our message and then go forward again more once we get through this. It's a 3-month campaign. We signed with them the other day for 3 months, and then we'll see from there where the direction takes us or where you want us to go with us. But there's been a lot that's happened since then, and we hope we're getting the message out there.
Thank you, Doug. Any questions for Doug? Commissioner Garner.
Thank you, Chairman. Doug, thank you for getting that out to the hunter education. I did have that question for you when you were talking to me earlier about it being mandatory part of hunter education, and currently it's optional. So I do have a question of how do you make that mandatory, and can we make that mandatory? I don't know who sets the framework of the hunter education, but when it's optional and it's something so vitally important to our deer herd, I find it, I don't know, it just seems like it ought to be a mandatory portion of the training or the hunter education. Also, the message you were talking about at Bass Pro Shop, is that message come up on a board that they have located in the store?
No. What I mean by that, if you're on your computer and you're shopping Bass Pro, it's a lot like if you've seen Brant, the messages popping up. All of a sudden, you're looking at it may not even be Bass Pro. You might be looking for a new car, but they've tracked it down and the message pops up. That's what it'll do. They've promised us, gosh, like 500,000 impressions with this deal all across the state, everywhere we need, approaching the sportsman, the age that we want. You know how they try to figure out ages and all that stuff. And the sportsmen that even to the point of that go out of town, they're going to try to track those too, try to find out the ones that get out of town and that hunt a lot. So the message will pop up when you're looking at stuff, which is what I really like. I feel like that will be the best way to reach them. When I first approached Channel 2, I really went in there with the idea of broadcast. Let's broadcast. And it was a sales guy that talked me into changing it because he saw that our message needed to be statewide. The things that we're going to get in addition to that on Channel 2's website, which is a good website, but they're also going to be doing things that pop on the sportsman's phone that gives them a 30-second message. The message that Chuck Yost, that you saw him do, we showed it to you in the Gatlinburg, that message will pop up with a new logo on it and Chuck telling folks what CWD is. And it just will pop randomly on the phone. And then they've got plans, they call it native advertising, where they stick in news stories on their website between other articles and make it look like a news story, which it is. So there's about 4 or 5 different styles of work they're going to be doing in this campaign. But the one I like the best are the messages popping up where they find the sportsman when they're browsing on their computer, no matter what they're looking for. I can be looking at a sports thing and I'll have a message pop up asking me if I want to buy a license. I don't know why they're asking me, but they do. So, and to answer your other part, Director Carter, I have to throw that to him.
Director Carter.
I had 2 reasons to come up here. If you have time for me to talk about something else related to CWD in just a second, to answer Mr. Gardner's question, it's an agency policy call about what is mandatory inside a hunter education thing. There are standards that you have to meet in order to go through the International Hunter Education Association standards, and we do those, so anything beyond that is strictly an agency policy, so it can be changed through policy.
Thank you.
Please go ahead with the CWD discussion if you want.
Well, and Doug, are you through?
Any other questions for Doug? Commissioner Sanders?
Doug, I've discovered there's just 3 or 4 Facebook groups that have almost 100,000 members. Do we do anything there?
We haven't so far. We do our Facebook, but no, we haven't been sending anything to them. It's a good idea. We can.
I mean, I found one. I think it was Middle Tennessee, 41,000 members. Middle Tennessee deer hunters, and I reached out to the administrators to post stuff out there for my show, and they were all appreciative as long as we didn't quote load it up. But I mean, there's at least 100,000 in those 3 or 4 groups that are just specifically deer hunters. That would be, I think, a great way to cheaply target our constituents.
We can do it, Commissioner. We'll look at that. Part of what the Channel 2 is doing too is bolstering our Facebook, and they're going to be running the small ads that you see often. And those will probably appear on Facebook pages like that. But what you're saying is get in their messaging with them and work with them, and we'd be glad to do that.
Yeah,
I just
now
need to identify them.
They don't always interact nicely, but they do interact.
We're used to them a little bit. We can handle. So anyway, thank you. Anything else from me, and I'll get out of the director's way.
Thank you, Doug.
Mr. Cook, I just wanted to mention a couple of things. The handout that I just put in front of you, I apologize for that not being in your notebook, but I was in Washington, D.C. Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and the time I was leaving to come down here Wednesday morning, staff folks had already left, so I didn't have a chance. They'd already taken all your books, and they were headed this way, so I had to bring this one on my own. But I wanted to just mention a couple of things. Actually, Dave Chandler was in D.C. as well, and we met with the leadership of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and then later on in the afternoon met with Secretary of Interior, with the Secretary of Interior, Mr. Zinke, and talked about things that we could jointly do. And one of the things that came out of this, and this is a bill that has been introduced in the House, and it's asking for funding from the U.S. government from whatever level to help states with CWD, and it attacks both sides. It attacks those states that already have it. It's a very costly endeavor if you have CWD to try to fight it, and of what you have to go through with in terms of managing the herd, the public relations side of it, and all those parts that go with it. And I won't try to go through all of these unless you have questions about them. And I'd like to tell you later on, either this afternoon or tomorrow, some other things that came out of those meetings. But I want you to know that these are things that are going on in CWD research side of the angles. They need more funding on both the federal side and the states. This would be money that would come back to the states to help us do all those things we're talking about here. And one of the things that when we met with the Secretary of Interior, we talked about captive herds and captive cervid herds especially. There's the USDA, most of that falls under them, the United States Department of Agriculture, as opposed to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service or the Department of Interior. And we talked about some of the problems that have developed out of captive cervids, and as you have seen before, certified herds don't necessarily mean anything over time, and they're actually dropping those out. So we talked about that and all the ramifications that go with that, and also the need for a greater effort from the veterinary services on the federal side to help us. They're more focused on developing a vaccine against CWD, and we want to see that to happen, obviously, but we want to see more effort on managing cervid herds where they have them. In Tennessee, we don't have those in terms of whitetail, as you know. We do have elk and others, and we need to talk about that not only in state, but with our federal government partners. But I wanted you to know that was going on, and also Doug was telling you about things he's doing. The Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies also has a communications person, and Doug and that person are communicating about the possibility of those states who do not have CWD to utilize the same logo that we do, so that we come up with a national branding as opposed to each state having their own. And I think that will be going out to all the states sometime in the very near future, but that's just a little update. There's a lot more information, but most of it's contained in this, and also gives you the information to Bill.
Thank you, Ed. Would you want to do a presentation at the next meeting to discuss all this, or was that the meat of it?
That's pretty much the meat of. I could certainly go into more detail. Be glad to do that. To give you a little bit more idea, there have been like 3 separate meetings with both the Department of Interior and the USDA, and especially veterinary services. They've been great friends to work with. We just have a little bit of different philosophy on where the emphasis ought to be.
I think it'd be great. Any new information we can have. Sounds like this is the latest going on, the latest meeting we've been to. So it'd be great to have that presentation next month. Appreciate if you could do that.
Glad to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. And to finish up the discussion on CWD, we've spent a lot of time discussing importation of carcasses, and the one thing we haven't really discussed much is the the use of natural urine scents. And as Ed mentioned there, this herd certification doesn't mean they're not CWD positive, as you would hope. The certification really doesn't mean that. And so, I think it'd be important to have a discussion on the possibility of restricting use of natural scents. And so could I ask Chuck for the next meeting just to give us a presentation on what other states have done with the natural urine scents, and when did they do it? How many of the states did it after they became positive, or before? Just a presentation of that for next month.
I can gladly accommodate that.
Thank you. And Madam Chairman, that ends the Wildlife Committee.
Thank you, members. And so we've got two more committees left, Boating and Law Enforcement, as well as the Budget Committee. I think the Budget Committee's got a bit of meat to it. And so why don't we take a break for a few minutes? There are refreshments in the back. And why don't we get back to work in 15 minutes? Great.